And hello and greetings to you in the name of our Lord and our Savior, Jesus Christ. It is our joy to have you with us as we continue our study of revealing the truth about the Quran. And today we will look deeper into the doctrine of abrogation to see the three types of abrogation. When we talk about abrogation, once again, it is the change of Allah's mind about His word, the removing of a word or a verse in the Quran by another verse to make something lawful unlawful or something unlawful lawful. That's not my opinion of what abrogation is, but that is exactly what Ibn Kathir have told us, the great Muslim scholar, about abrogation. So let's begin our study by looking at the three types of abrogation. There are three, and they are amazing three. Let's look at the first type of abrogation, and that is the original text and its commands no longer exist. Allah caused it to be forgotten. Remember what we shared earlier in our previous program when we looked at Quran chapter 2 verse 106, when Allah said, whatever verse we abrogate or cause it to be forgotten, we bring a verse like it or better than it. So here we see the application of the Allah change His mind and causes people to forget about the verse. Now when you think about this verse, you think, what does this really mean exactly? How do we know that this type of abrogation exists? It's very simple. You see, we got a story, and we read about it in Muslim source, as we have seen on the screen, that this man was reciting the Quran at home. Imagine a man is bragging about himself and his ability to memorize some portion of the Quran, and he is at home and beginning to recite the verses of the Quran as Muslims do, shaking his head back and forth, or maybe right and left. I don't know which way he was doing it, but he said, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, in the name of Allah, the Merciful, the Merciful. And he could not remember. He forgot the verses which he worked hard to memorize. And then he was upset. Imagine with me, he talked to his wife and he was upset, and she said, oh, whatever his name is, Abu Omar or Abu Ali, father of Omar, it's okay, take it easy. Tomorrow you can go and meet with other Muslim believers or the Apostle of Allah, and he will remind you of this verse. Well, this man went to the mosque, and behold, the people in the mosque at the entry of the mosque standing, waiting for the Apostle of Allah to come, and they also have the same problem. They could not remember the same verses which the man could not remember the night before. And then the Prophet of Islam, Muhammad, came and he said, Assalamu alaikum. Say, wa alaikum assalam. What's going on? They told him about the problem, and Muhammad himself, just use your imagination, said, okay, gentlemen, sit down, relax. Let me quote you these verses which you cannot remember. I will recite it to you. And Muhammad said, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, in the name of Allah, the Merciful, the Merciful. And behold, Muhammad himself could not remember the same verses which this gentleman and other men could not remember. And we know from this source, that Islamic source, that somehow Angel Jibreel came to Muhammad in a later time, and he explained to him that this portion of the Quran has been removed from the Quran. You are no longer required to remember it, because Allah caused it to be forgotten, and you don't worry about it. You're not going to practice any of its teachings. Why? Because Allah removes this verse from the Quran. Now you may think about this to be a ridiculous thing, but that is Islam. This information comes from Muslim sources, and we know for sure that's what really Muslims believe. And now we ask a question like, what is some examples that Allah will cause some verses to be removed from the Quran? Let me take you to a verse in the Quran. Let's go to Quran chapter 22 and verse 52, as Allah said, and we did not send before you any messenger, that's Allah speaking to Muhammad here, or prophet, except that when he recites, Satan cast in his recitation. So Allah abrogates what Satan cast. You see, the problem is very simple, as Muhammad explained in Quran chapter 22 and verse 52, is this. Prophets came before Muhammad, messengers came before Muhammad, and they were reciting the verses of Allah to their people. And while a messenger or the prophet was reciting, and behold, Satan have power over them and caused them to say words or to say verses, was not really part of the Quran. That's why Allah remove these verses, change this revelation, which is the prophet's claim, and put it to what it's supposed to be, without the verses which Satan cast into the prophet's mouth or the messenger's lips. We have a problem with our dear Muslim friends. I'm sorry to say that to you that there is not one verse in the Bible was written or given by Satan to any angel, to any prophet or any messenger who came before Muhammad. So if Muslim cannot produce to us a good example from the Bible, this is just a propaganda. This is what Muhammad taught in the Quran, or what Allah claimed to Muhammad in the Quran, but there is no truth in it at all. Why do I say that? Because this is the reality. Now, do we have any example in the Quran from which we can find that really Muhammad was receiving verses from Satan and Allah removes these verses from the Quran? Yes, indeed. Watch with me again. In Quran chapter 53, verses 19 and 20, it's written, have you seen Allat and Al-Uzza and another, the third one, Manat? And then we used to read in the Quran in the following verses, that's, verse 21, 22, 23, Allah used to say, these are the exalted, whose intercession is to be hoped for. And notice now that is the words which Muhammad said Satan put on his mouth, put in his lips as he was reciting the Quran, and it was not really Allah's word. And so Muhammad added these words on Allah's word, not because Muhammad said it, but because Satan really had the power and authority to make Muhammad do so. And that's why Allah removed these verses from the Quran. So today, if we open the Quran to read the found verses, verses 21, 22, we will not find these verses. As a matter of fact, we're going to see exactly what we have here on the screen. As Allah said, do you have the male and does he have the female? This is an unjust division. These are just names that you and your fathers named them. Allah did not send it down with authority. They only follow the conjecture and what the soul desires, and indeed the guidance come to them from their Lord. So what happened to the early verses? It was removed. Why it was removed? Because it was not originally from Allah. Somehow Satan had the power over Muhammad to make him say words or verses in the Quran, and these were not the true word of Allah, as Muslim scholars explain. I have another theory about that. I believe deep in my heart that Muhammad put these verses in the Quran to please and appease those people of Quraysh who worship Allat, Al-Uzza, and Manat. These are the three gods which the infidels, the people did not believe in Islam, the people of Quraysh worshipped, and Muhammad tried to make peace between him and all these people. And they fall into it. And they say, Allahu Akbar, why not? We got our gods, we just add Allah to it. Muhammad is praising our gods. Muhammad likes our gods, so why not we just add Allah to our gods? But then later, when Muhammad became a powerful man, he removed these verses from the Quran because he no longer needs to deceive the people of Quraysh. He got enough followers, he can kill the last one of the people of Quraysh. And I'm sorry, this type of abrogation is nonsense. Allah, the God of Muhammad, did not have any power to protect his prophet from the influence of Satan, that he causes Muhammad to believe and to teach things is not in the Quran at all. To the point that now we know that Muhammad have no power or authority over his physical body, that he says words and sentences in the Quran was by the power of Satan. Now I'd like to move into the second type of abrogation. Very easy. We say it is actually the verses exist in the Quran. No, the verses, but it is no longer practiced. It's not because the Quran said something that means Muslims have to believe it and Muslims have to practice it. So Allah left the verses in the Quran, but He actually commands the Muslim not to practice these verses anymore. And we say, why? Why God will do that? This is part of the deception of Allah. And by the way, that's the only way for the Muslims who live in the West can survive in countries like America. Because Muslims are very smart, as their Allah was also smart. They fall of deception, as Allah is the best, their Allah is the best deceiver, and they know how to use these early verses of the Quran to deceive the West. I remember a few years ago, a minister was supposed to go and speak in their church, and with actually association, it's supposed to be like 16 churches gathering together for training. And one of these churches, which is the biggest one, the leader of this church was a liberal. And I say liberal mean an ungodly minister. Can you imagine? In America, we have ungodly ministers. Yes, indeed. The Bible calls them wolf in sheepskin. And this guy sent an email to all the churches asking them not to attend my meeting because he said Usama teach hate. And he knows Islam to be a loving, peaceful religion. And when I met with this preacher, I was very clear with him. I said, preacher, what in the world you're doing to your churches? Why you're teaching lies about me? He said, because you're not telling the truth about the Muslims. Muslims love the Christians. Muslims love the Jews. The Quran have many verses which have high respect for the Jews and the Christians. And I asked him, like what? Where in the Quran you see anything like that? And guess what? He took me to this verse in the Quran. That is Quran chapter 2 and verse 62. And let's read together this verse. Allah said, surely those who have believed, and those who are Jews and the Nasara, that's the word for Christians Muhammad used in the Quran, and the Sabians, those are idol worshippers, whoever believed in Allah and in the last day and did good deeds, so they will have their ajur, non-Arabic word which mean wages, with their Lord, and no fear on them, and they will not grieve. Did you hear the words of Allah? This is I call the broken record of Muslims live in the West. We believe in Jesus, and we believe in Christianity. We believe in Moses, and we believe in Judaism. We believe in Buddhas, and we believe in Buddhism. We believe in your cow, and we will cut the best green grass for it. And Muslim will do that in the West. Muslim will do that in America. And if you ask the Muslim, can you support that by any verse in the Quran? They will say, sure. Quran chapter 2 verse 62. Muslims, Jews, Christians, Sabians, if you believe in Allah and do good deeds, there's no fear on you. You will make it to paradise. For Allah loves the Jews, Allah loves the Christian, Allah loves the idol worshippers, Allah loves everybody. And that's what you see in all the meetings which is held all over the West. They call it interfaith meetings. What is interfaith meeting? That's when you see an idiot Jew next to an ignorant Christian, next to a foolish Buddhist, next to the smart deceiver Muslims, and they all hold hands and they sing Kumbaya, or I call it the Barney song. You know the Barney song? I love you, you love me, we are a happy family. You know this song? You know, you have children, you watch Barney, the cartoon, okay? That is the song which I believe the Muslim will continue to sing in America until they have the upper hand, and then it will be too late. But the fact is, this verse in the Quran has been abrogated. This verse in the Quran has been cancelled. Allah is no longer requires a Muslim to practice this verse in the Quran. And you may ask, why? I tell you the verse is very simple. Because Muhammad became strong. Muhammad is no longer weak and needs the help of the Jews and the Christian and Sabians. He has enough followers and he can take care of himself. He can get rid of the Jews and the Christian and the Sabians. As a matter of fact, if you read Quran chapter 2 and verse 62 by any Muslim scholar, they will tell you, هذه الآية منسوخة. This verse is abrogated. ونسختها آية السيف. And it was abrogated by the verse of the sword. 9:5, chapter 9, verse 5. Or, how about we read the found verse? The found verse is said in Quran chapter 3, verse 85. And whoever desires any other religion except Islam, so it will not be accepted from him, and in the hereafter he will be of the losers. Think with me for a minute here. The early verse, Jews, Christians, idol worshippers, Muslims, anybody, everybody, we're all good. Just believe in Allah, do some good deeds, feed some poor, or take care of some widows, and do some charity work. You'll make it to paradise. That's Quran chapter 2, verse 62. Now in this verse, Quran chapter 3, verse 85, a complete different story. It's only Islam. You believe in Islam, you make it to paradise. You don't believe in Islam, you burn in hell forever. That's not my words. That is the teaching of Allah in the Quran. Now we have a question. The Muslims say, do they not consider the Quran if it is from other than Allah? They will have found in it many inconsistencies. And that's not my word, by the way. That is the words of Allah in the Quran, as we see here together in Quran chapter 4 and verse 82. That's exactly. If they found any inconsistency in the Quran, that would be a proof that the Quran is not the word of Allah. But here we see in the Quran two verses. Quran 262, Jews and Christian Muslims are good. And Sabians are good too. Quran 385, only Muslims are good. Quran 262, Christian and Jew and Sabians will make it to paradise. Quran 385, they will burn in hell. Only the Muslim will make it to heaven, and the rest are losers. So you Christians are losers. The Jews are losers. Anyone and everyone who believe in any other religion except Islam is literally a loser. He will burn in hell forever. So we have misconception in the Quran. That means the Quran is not the word of Allah. And Muslims can say, you got it wrong. It may look like they are misconception, but don't forget the doctrine of abrogation. Because of abrogation, now we know for sure that the word of Allah is not to be considered to be error or any contradiction in it, but actually it is Allah's will. Early he was nice to the Jew and the Christian, everybody, because he wanted to lead them to Islam. And then when Islam became strong, now Allah does not need to be this loving, peaceful Allah. He will force people to accept Islam, because otherwise they are losers. They will be killed by the hands of the Muslims, and they will burn in hell forever. And to continue our study of the doctrine of abrogation, to reveal the truth about the Quran, please join us again in the next broadcast. And until we meet again, may the true God of the Bible continue to bless you and yours.